Well, good morning, everybody. Got kind of an interesting little project here on the V8 Ranger. So we are finally putting the Caltracs modern day traction bars. Shouldn't really call them modern day anymore. They've been around for a long time now, but I've got the passenger side mocked up already. A lot of times when I do a video and there's a left and a right, I'll go through and do one side and figure out what all was a pain in the butt about it, and then we go over that when we're doing the other side. Here's our old Jagster Lakewood style slapper bars. I've been running these for about 4 months. They do work, but they do have one major flaw that I just couldn't live with anymore. When you put the traction bar on the leaf spring and you cinch the U-bolts down, it really appears to bind up the leaf spring pretty badly. You can actually see how much it's flattened out the spring from here to here. So when I take the tension off of these U-bolts, you'll actually see the spring open up and the rear axle drop down. That's a pretty good bind. I didn't really, I don't know, maybe I was in denial, but it really made the truck ride absolutely terrible. A little shot of the difference from the back. Now keep in mind the rear axle's fully drooped out right now. This is lowered on a flip kit, so it's about 4.5 inches low in the back of lowering. You can actually see the axle is tipped right now because that spring is bound up and this spring is not. So this is the basics of it. It's your front bracket. It's gonna go like that. Leaf spring eye is gonna be in this bushing hole right here. You get a new U-bolt plate. This will only go on one way on the Ranger. The bar itself, I'm assuming this is chromoly because it's pretty light. They give you a solid bushing kit to go in the front leaf spring eye. A couple of things we're going to go over on that I'm not thrilled about. I finally broke down and bought a brand new set of U-bolts. Probably a good idea. My old U-bolts, which I still have on the driver's side, they've been torqued and removed and retorqued probably like 6 times now. That's not really a good idea to reuse U-bolts that many times, especially in a scenario where you have a spring under the axle set up, because if you have U-bolt failures, the axles and tire are going up into the fender. Another thing that I did that I wanted to go over real quick is I made the command decision to go ahead and take the overload leaf out. So you can see over here we no longer have the overload leaf. Now why would I do that? Since this truck is lowered on a flip kit with the springs under the axle, when it's sitting at ride height, there's only about this much space, if I remember right, between the bump stop and the axle tube. If we put enough weight in the bed of this thing to ever get, the bottom line is you'll be riding down the road on the bump stop before the overload leaf even activates. So there's really no point. It's just dead weight that you're driving around with. I weighed this overload leaf and it's 9.5 pounds by itself, so we're taking almost 20 pounds of steel out of the back of the truck. I had to make new center pins because the factory center pins don't have enough thread right here and it would shank out. The two main pieces of adversity that I've fought so far: the leaf spring eye in my factory leaf springs is 1 3/4 inches. the bushing that they provided, and this is supposed to be a Ranger specific kit. This is 1 5/8 by 2.5 inches. So there ain't no way there's supposed to be that much slop. There ain't no way there's supposed to be that much slop in the suspension bushing. So I'll have to call them on Monday and find out what's going on with that. Problem number 2 that I ran into. The steel bushing, this ID is too small for the factory leaf spring bolt. So that's kind of frustrating. So this is the OEM leaf spring bolt with a flag nut that would be in here. This is the ride height adjuster bolt out of my C5 Corvette, which is 1 millimeter smaller in diameter. It fits, but the holes in the leaf spring hanger are now sloppy, so it'll work for now. I can at least drive the truck, but you know, you just got to make sure that this bushing is pinched down tight, this very high torque. So what I ended up doing to get around this bushings problem for now is I'm wrapping this bushing in aluminum tape tight to take up that 1/8 of an inch, and then I put enough tape on there that you get it to just to where it's so tight you have to beat this in with a dead blow hammer. That should work for now. It's kind of hackish, but on that same note, I need to be able to drive the truck. But I will call Calvert on tomorrow morning and see what they recommend to fix these little small issues. This I could put in the lathe at work and open it up with a drill bit. This, I don't know what, hopefully they have a bushing that'll work that I can just swap out. It's super easy to take these springs apart. There's nothing scary here. Like I'll show you taking the spring out of the driver's side. With the power tools, you can have that spring out in probably 5 minutes. So this is the aluminum tape that I'm using to build up that bushing. Thankfully it's only like $5 a roll, so I didn't have to invest a bunch of money into getting this thing back up and running. So this is what that bushing looks like taped up to 1 3/4 inches. We'll get her pounded into the spring once we get the spring out. First I want to show this spring relaxing with the pressure of these U-bolts. See how this is all opened up again now? Almost certain that was my ride problem. This can be done. The Caltracs can be done. You can put the front bracket on without taking the spring out. Personally, I think it's easier to work on the spring with it out, and I think I can get this spring out in less than 5 minutes, so it's not a hard task. These little 3/8 stubby Milwaukees are ridiculous. Alright, do the engineering vlog the way I ride with my exhaust. I gotta go drop the front first. All right, myself a little pill. I'm gonna get no water out here. Goddamn. Holy crap. Flip kit bracket. This thing going this way. Need that. Okay, now we'll cut this excess off with the cutoff wheel. Should be ready to go once we get the bushing in. Okay, getting the forward bushing out on a Ranger is actually pretty easy. These aren't metal sleeve style bushings. So I found the best way to do it is to just cut the rubber flange off with a pair of flush cutters, and then we'll pound it out with the sledgehammer. I haven't found any need for having to drill this out or chisel it or burning it out with a torch. I'm just going to put a little WD-40 on here, then we're going to pound it out with a socket on the center sleeve. There she's going. We'll edit the mess out of there. That's what the factory Ranger bushing looks like. No metal sleeve inside. Got to get every speck of rust and any protrusions out of this rust in here if I'm going to have any chance of getting my aluminum tape job into this eye without shredding it. So I might take one wrap off of here. This one seems a little bit tighter than this spring was. Okay, we're going to try that. I'm going to put some grease on this tape to help it get in there. Okay. That should last until I talk to Calvert on Monday and see what they recommend. I'm gonna cut this guy off and then we'll put the spring back in. Alright, we're ready to jam this thing back together. So we're gonna coat this in grease, grease the bushing up real good. Those of you that have Caltracs experience, how often did you usually disassemble this and grease this? Because there is no greaser for it. I don't know that there could be even one designed into it. I'm thinking like once a year. This truck gets driven in the rain quite a bit, so it'll be interesting to see how this goes in the long run. Okay, we gotta slip that over the top. Then we're gonna run this bushing through our sleeve until she's flush. Right like that. Most of you know this already, but you don't want to tighten up any of these bushing bolts. Well, this one technically doesn't matter because it's a floating steel all metal bushing. The rubber bushings we don't want to torque until the load is put back on this axle. Our flip kit bracket, this only goes one way. Alright, we're ready for torquing. I'm going to torque these to 65 foot-pounds. I don't remember if I mentioned it at all, but these are set up as a turnbuckle, so you can adjust them on the vehicle. So you gotta figure out which end you got working with here. It's almost hot when the sun is right on your black clothes.
Great. I forgot to tell you, I volunteered you for a pulled pork for Easter. Hopefully that's okay.
I don't even know when Easter is.
Next Sunday, a week from today.
Okay, make sure your grease zerks are pointed down. Otherwise you're never going to be able to get to them. There's really no adjustments to be made to these bars until this axle is jacked up and we're off the ground. Or not off the ground, but you know what I mean, loaded up. If we were getting ready to go drag racing with this thing, we would actually have driver in the driver's seat, but we're just going to be street driving for a while, so I'm not even going to put a bunch of preload in. I'm just going to probably put like maybe a quarter turn of preload, if that. When you start your rod ends into the tube, you want to try and keep them even, since this is a turnbuckle. And probably a thread off on this end, but that's not the end of the world. I've only come up a little bit with the floor jack and we're already on the preload pin. This side, not so much. Okay, let's go up some more. I saw a really good video the other day on YouTube on how to adjust the Caltracs for what your specific conditions, especially if you're launching at the track. I think it was like Drag Boss or something like that. It's a channel I'd never seen before, but they did a really good job of explaining how to set these bars up and how to do preload. So if I can find the channel again, I'll look in my history and see if I can attach a link. I'm gonna go set the other side, make sure this is tight. I gotta torque all of the bushings. I'm gonna put a couple pumps of synthetic grease in here and get this tightened up. Then we'll be ready to put it on the ground. So I talked to Caltracs. They swear up and down I'm the first person to have ever called them and said that I had this problem with a Ranger. So the bushings that they sent were 1 5/8", and the inner steel bushing they have a 1/2 inch. This particular truck is 5/8". This is my OEM leaf spring hanger bolt. So like I said, I called them up. They said they'd never seen this before, but they were able to find me a set of bushings that will work in this application. So 1 3/4" OD, and then this is 5/8" ID on the steel sleeve, so that I can go back to using the OEM. So this replacement inner steel sleeve they sent me is 5/8" diameter, so I can go back to using my OEM leaf spring hanger bolts. I did the other side already. It is possible to change these bushings with the whole axle assembly, springs, everything in the truck still. It's a bit of a pain. These are super tight. I'm using a C-clamp to drive it into the leaf spring eye. So I didn't die for my aluminum tape hack to turn an 1 5/8 bushing into an 1 3/4 bushing. The aluminum tape hack probably would have lasted for years. So the Caltracs have been on the truck for about a week. Figured I'd better do a kind of an update and a review portion of the video to conclude it. Man, I'm blown away. It was worth every penny of the almost $500 I've got wound up into them, but they perform extremely well. And the ride quality is unmatched compared to the slapper bars that were on there. There's no doubt in my mind that the slapper bars were binding up the leaf springs so bad. I mean, hell, the springs are so free. The back of the truck is almost 3/4 of an inch taller than it was. You can actually move the suspension just by hand pushing on the bed. It was a pleasure working with the guys at Caltracs. They helped me get the bushing issue resolved, so I was happy about that. Little rubber on the exhaust tip there. I don't know how that got there. But yeah, it's going to be a minute before this truck ever sees the track. But as far as street detail, I couldn't be more happy. So if y'all have any questions on how to install these things on a Ford Ranger, and you know, definitely if any of you other Ford Ranger guys out there that have installed these before, post up in the comments and let me know if you had the same bushing problem. But anyways, leave a comment, and beyond that, we'll see y'all on the next one.